Hello, my name is Jacob Powell with OSU Extension Service. I'm an agricultural extension agent based in Wasco and Sherman counties in North Central Oregon. Today I'm going to be speaking about how you can use Google Earth Pro as an effective mapping tool for your farming operation. So to get started, to get Google Earth Pro, it's a free download from the internet. You're going to type in Google Earth Pro in your web browser, and this should come up at the top of Earth Vision's Google Earth. You're going to go ahead and click on that. You will see there are several different types of Google Earth. What you want is Google Earth Pro on desktop. So you can go ahead and select that to get to the bottom of the screen, and then select Download Earth Pro on desktop. And then you're going to accept and download. Then that's going to go ahead and download onto your computer, and regardless of if you have a Mac or PC, you're then going to follow the installation instructions and install that on your computer. Once you download Google Earth and you install, you then are going to want to open up Google Earth Pro. And it's going to come up with an additional window to what you see here that's going to say Navigate on Google Earth. And in the lower right hand corner of that window, you can uncheck the box that is labeled Show Tips at Start. That way that introduction box doesn't come open every single time you open up Google Earth. Some of the tips that they suggest in that screen can be helpful to get oriented to all that Google Earth has to offer. I don't know if all those features are going to be pertinent or interesting to you with your farming operation, but you can definitely explore at your leisure with some of the different tips and orientations that they offer. But to get started here, it's going to come up with the Earth here. And so I just want to go over basic navigating features here, because you're going to see in the right corner here, we have several different control options. The main one being this slide bar that you can zoom in or out. So we're going to start zooming in. And then you can also click on the screen here and use that hand to drag you closer to the area of interest that you want to zoom in on. So this is one way to start zooming in. The quickest way is if you know the location. On the left hand side here, you can see we have a search box, and so you can type into there an address, a county, a city. We're going to go ahead and type in the Dalles here. Dalles, Oregon. You select search, and it's going to automatically start zooming the screen into that location. So there we see the Dalles. Again, we can zoom in more or zoom out. This top bar here controls the tilt of the screen. So you can start looking up, looking down. You can also, as you can see, you can kind of go in between there. And again, whenever you're tilting the screen here, again, these left and right, you're kind of going left or right versus the angle of the screen here. And north is always staying oriented towards north, so you can kind of keep an idea of where north is at all times. Again, we're using the hand tool to drag around, but this tool here, you can also select on that to move your view around the screen going different directions. And again, this person on the green disc, that's the street view person. So you drop that in on the street anywhere, it's going to give you the street view. And then you can continue to change your angle with that as well. Then you're just going to select exit street view to get out of that. And we're going to zoom further out here. All right, so that's one option there. That's how you typically want to drive in Google Earth. And then looking more on the left-hand side on these toolbars here, we already went over search, places. When you first download Google Earth, the first thing that's going to be under places is going to be a sightseeing tour, which basically will take you to different spots around the globe you can look at. That can be interesting, but if you're using this for agricultural purposes, I'd say you can just go ahead and delete that right at the start. So if you want to add or delete things, the easiest way is you just click on it with your mouse, and you can go down to delete contents on there. The quickest way to do that would be just to select the sightseeing tour. You don't want to delete my places completely. And then layers, you have several different things that automatically come loaded into Google Earth. So you have borders and labels. So here you're going to see the border between Washington and Oregon and the Columbia River is now showing up. Places. Places shows, you can see there's different icons for pharmacy, churches, governmental buildings. So that can be helpful. For agricultural stuff, sometimes that's too much information. The other interesting thing is that you have photos here. So again, I select that, you can see all these little icons that pop up. And so if you select those, a photo should come up. That one isn't coming up there. But yes, a photo that somebody has taken and uploaded into Google is now showing up. So sometimes it's interesting to see what those photos look like, but again, sometimes that's too much information. Roads, labels all the streets and the roads. 3D buildings is more pertinent in a city. Google has limited 3D buildings that they have. There aren't really many around here that I know of. Weather is not going to be terribly helpful. You can select more. It's got some other information there that can be helpful. So those are some of the main toolbar features. The other thing I want to point out with this map is if you go up to view, there's several different view options. And first off, I want to point off show navigation. The navigation is this toolbar here that allows us to zoom in or zoom out. So some options that you can do with that. You can have it there automatically, which just is interesting. That makes it kind of fade away, and then you have to drag your mouse over there to find it. So sometimes that can be difficult. I prefer to have show navigation on always. But if we make a map, sometimes you don't want that to be in the way. You can just show the compass there with the tilt option. You can never show it. Status bar is this thing here to the left. You can also add a grid, which if you're making a map, that can be helpful. If you're just viewing on the screen, that's kind of too busy, so often I don't select that. And then there's another feature of an overview map, which if you select that, it's got this overview map of where we are in comparison to the broader landscape. So it's kind of showing that red cross is showing the screen that we're looking at right now in the broader landscape. So that can be helpful if you're making a map that you want to have some context to where that map is. Often it's too much information that I typically don't show it. View, and you can decide to have the sun. There's historical imagery we'll go over later. These are some of the main things with view. And when you get more familiar with this as well, and you have this set up at your ranch, you can select make this my start location. You have the pin mark there marking this as your starting location. That way, whenever you open up Google Earth, it will automatically take you to this point. Otherwise, you're just kind of left scrambling across the whole globe deciding where you want to first zoom in to get started with your mapping project. I still have that overview map there, so I'm going to take that off. One last thing with view, scale legend. What this does, as you can see in the lower left-hand corner there, now we have this scale, and as you zoom out or zoom in, you can see that change. So I want to go over some additional features here, and we're going to go to the Chutes State Park, which that's typing me in for their mailing address. Try search, but again, it's going to change us here. Okay, there we are. We're moving right into the Deschutes River State Park. Okay, now that we're there, I'm going to delete that. I don't want that showing up on the screen. Close it there. Okay, so those are some of the basics with how we navigate and utilize the Google Earth interface. Continuing our exploration of Google Earth Pro, So to begin with, we're here at the Deschutes State Park, and what I want to go over now is how you can basically create a map for your farming operation and add some additional information. So again, the default view in Google Earth Pro is that you're always looking north. Let's mix things up a little bit. I'm going to turn us around. Quicker way to do this is if you're zoomed out further. If you're zoomed in like I am now, it does take a little bit longer to get turned around like that. I'm going to tilt my view up so we can look upriver here. And tilt up just a little bit more there. Okay, so here we're looking up the Deschutes River, and you can see we have showing some of these some of these trails there along the Deschutes River there. So to begin with, we can create different roads. And so you're going to look at this upper toolbar. We have this sidebar option simply shows or does not show the sidebar. I prefer to have that available to look at. The next one over is you can create a polygon, so you can outline a field. And so let's say we just want to outline part of this wheat field that's here. So you would select that polygon option. This additional window is going to pop up for you to input information on it. First off, we're going to actually create it. So you can see we have our little square here. So what you're going to do is you're going to start clicking with it on the screen like that. It's pretty easy when you have a good corner that you can snap it to. And again, this is just for an example, so we don't necessarily need to go all the way around that field. Where this would really be helpful is if you have a pasture and you want to know the acreage of that pasture. You just want to label different pastures. This is one way to do that. So here you can type in the name. I'm going to say field 1. And the nice thing is you can add some additional description information here. Often you have a good idea of what you've been doing on your farm anyways, but with Google Earth Pro, it gives you the option of having an electronic database that you can show things spatially. So here we could put that this field was seeded October 1st, 2020. Average yield across, the times that you've been farming this field. You can add in some additional information like that. So other options here, we put in a description, style, color. So right here, the area of this field is filled in, which often that hides what you want to be seeing underneath it. So often I just select outlined. There you see it's outlined in white. You can change the color of this to whatever color you want. Red often tends to pop up a little bit more. There's several different options here of how to select which color you want to use. And opacity is how clear it is. So if you decrease this, you can start seeing more of the field behind it, which this is more of a helpful feature when you have a polygon that's filled in. You don't necessarily need to do this on just the outline of the field. View, don't really need to do anything there. Altitude is how close this is to the ground. So if you do, let's see what we can do here. But you can create space so that this line is actually more off the ground. So see, you can actually start raising it up. And that's just if you have a lot of things you're drawing in the same spot. Sometimes that can be helpful. Sometimes that's typically not really necessary to mess with. So measurements is pretty slick because here it actually will give you the perimeter of around this field. So let's say you wanted to put some cattle in here. You would know, okay, we have to put in 2 miles of perimeter fence. And then here you can also select the area. And again, these units you select on this, you can put this in any units you want. So we could do that in feet, 12,000 feet. Square miles, typically area, you're going to want to put that in acres, so you can select acres. Okay, that's a 150 acre field. Another thing too, which is nice, if you want to adjust this, you can just select on these dots that you already drew and you can move those in. So what we might want to do is, I drew this kind of big, but let's say you want to take this goalie out of the equation. So then you can go in there. Oop, getting a little messy there, but you get how you can kind of adjust it on the fly as well. It's going to select OK. And one thing you have to be careful, sometimes Google Earth, if you look on the toolbar on the left, sometimes it will save different things that you add under temporary places. And when you do that, when you exit out of Google Earth Pro, it doesn't save it. So next time you go back in, all that information you just added or created on your map, that's not going to be there. So make sure that if it does go to temporary places, I'm going to demonstrate here. So let's say field 1 was under temporary places here. So then all you do, you'd select that and drag it, and you would bring it up, you'd bring it up to my places there and drop it in there, and that'd be organized. It's important to think about these different mapping programs, that organization really pays dividends when you start mapping these things out. So right now I just have field 1 sitting there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up here to add. I'm going to select add folder. And I'm going to say this is for fields. I'm going to say OK. So now field is down there. So we're going to add field 1 under fields. And what's nice is when you start adding a lot of features, you can decide, okay, I want to create a map, but I don't want the field outlines in that map. So keep the line there. So creating maps for field size and acreage and pastures is helpful. The other thing that you might want to do is you might want to create a road or a pathway. You might be thinking about getting a grant to put in a haul road that you're going to put gravel down to get to your wheat field or another road on your field. Often it's nice if the conservation districts will do some of that mapping for you, but sometimes you want to know a ballpark what something's going to cost before you give them an application, because you want to know if it's way more money than you want to spend even with cost share assistance. It's kind of nice to know that before you call them up and go through all the trouble of having a technician come out and look at the project and you realize, oh, that's like double the feat that I thought it was. I don't want to pay that much money. So the tool to do that, there's two different ways to do this. And so you can click add path right next to that Polygon one. And again, you have options of labeling it. You can go down here and let's say this trail right here is what we want to do. So again, you just start clicking on the screen. And again, to demonstrate, that got kind of long there. So I'm going to, excuse me, I need to readjust that. I'm trying to, trying to adjust the road. There you go. You can see that I'm trying to make it even up better with the field there. So I'm showing how you can backtrack and edit that as well. And again, when the hand is on, you can actually drag it out. Otherwise, you select this, and it's going to create an additional point in the middle that then you have to readjust, so that gets messy. So okay, so that's one way to do that. Again, same system that you can change the color and width of that line. If it's a road, let's say 2. So there you can see our road there. And so what also is really helpful, there's another tool here that, we're creating features on our map, but sometimes you want to actually just determine the length of something. So there's a ruler feature here. You can see I put my mouse on the ruler. It's the show ruler. Click that. So here you can create just a line like we did here. What is helpful, so the line will just tell you how far something is. But if you go into path, I'm going to show you something here. So path, we're just going to, this is the railroad here, but let's just say that we're trying to create a road along this. So there we go. Okay, let's say we just want to stop there with our road. It's 1.16 miles. Again, you could also change that to feet. What's really slick here is we're going to say show elevation profile. And here go ahead and when you select that, Google Earth is going to spin around like it did here, but it's going to keep that in focus, and it's just kind of trying to show the whole overview of the path that you created when it does that. So what's really slick here is that it just told us the elevation profile, so we can figure out, well, how steep of a road is this? Because sometimes you're looking at different options of where do we want to, what's the best access to get into this wheat field for harvest? Where's the best road to get into the pasture that you've got your cattle in? I mean, this can show you how steep it is, because maybe it's a really steep road, and so you explore multiple options, and you can use these elevation profiles to figure out how steep it is. Likewise, if you're putting in a pipeline, sometimes it's good to know the rise over run, what your slope is. So you can see here, so I'm dragging my mouse here, and you can see at the same time up here, you can see the red arrow that's pointing down moving. So you can see our path, we start down by the river, you start going upriver. In general, we're going up slope. So the average slope is just saying the overall average slope of this line. And then it's also giving us our gain and our elevation loss. So that can be helpful. The other really nice thing about this is when you draw a path, you can hit save, and then that's going to save your road there. So let's say road A. Road A, say potential all road. Hit OK, and then that saves it as a feature. And again, so you can see here, often when you create a path using that route, it's going to save that under temporary places. So again, we're going to want to select that, drag that up into my places so it's saved. And again, we're getting a little bit more disorganized here, so I'm going to add a folder for roads. Again, it's saving, let's see what's going on here. So we can take road A, put that under roads. Things are looking much more organized now. So other key thing too is you start getting all this information, you want to make sure that it gets saved. Google Earth Pro does not automatically save things. So how you would go about that, there's a couple different ways, but you can select My Places, which encompasses all of these folders that you have underneath here. And you can go up to File, Save, hit Save My Places, saves it in a random folder on your desktop, which can be helpful. Sometimes it's hard to find where that folder is at. So often I like to go to Save, and I like to save place as. And decide what you want to label all that information that you have there. Depends on the map project. Say a tutorial, and so there's two options that you can. There's two file types you can save in Google Earth, either KMZ or KML. Both are pretty similar. When you really dive deep into the details, KML saves a little bit more detail, but it depends on what you're trying to save. For all intents and purposes, the KMZ is totally fine. So then I'm going to say save, and then with what you could do is you could then, if you go to open desktop, when you open up that KMZ file, it's going to contain everything that you have here. And so that's a good way to guarantee that you're backing up the information that you have in here. You can take that single KMZ file, back it up onto the cloud, put it on an external hard drive when you back up things on your computer. Because if stuff on your computer gets lost, it's really frustrating. If you spend a lot of time clicking on the dots here, you don't want to lose all that information. So the other thing is, how do we create labels out here? And so that place mark feature that we use for our starting location, you can select that. Again, this folder will pop up. You can see when this is blinking in yellow, that means you're able to actually position that. So then you select it like here. So let's say we want to label this field. Let's say because it is frustrating. You add that additional information into those specific features. You can select on field 1 here to the left, and you can get information from it that way, but it's not going to actually display it on the map. So if you're trying to print out a map, you want things labeled. So use the place mark feature, and then you can type in the name there. And then there's several options. Sometimes you want this pin here to show exactly where it is, but sometimes you don't want anything. Or if you're creating like an emergency preparedness plan map, you want specific features that you're labeling. So if you select on the push pin there, suddenly you see all these different options. Some of these could be helpful for your farming operation if you're trying to show where's the gas tank on the farm. Some of these are not very ag specific, so the nice thing is you can select add custom icon, and you can browse on your computer. You can also select a photograph under custom icon. Sometimes that's nice for grazing, that if you're trying to monitor what the pastures look like, that when the cows leave that pasture, you snap a photo of it. You could then upload a photo from that as an icon and put that in that pasture. And then over the years, you could have multiple icons that are actually photos documenting what that pasture looks like over the years that you've been grazing it. The other option too, and again at the top here, you can change the color and scale and the opacity of it. Again, I need to demonstrate this better. So let's say 5%. Oh. Just trying to adjust the opacity there, and it's not liking what I'm doing here. So if I hit OK, I guess 50% is clear enough that it doesn't even show up. Oh, I'm not on the pin, that's why. So now we go to opacity 50%. You can see it's a little bit more see-through. You can kind of see the detail of the field underneath. But often if you're just going to create labels, what you're going to do is you're going to say no icon. Select OK. Boom, and then we just have the label. So again, you could try to stay organized here, and you could add a folder just for those labels so it's not cluttering things up. Because sometimes you're going to create a map and you don't want all the labels there. So field 1, drag that into labels. Done. So again, if we want the road, great. If we don't, we just unselect it like that. The other thing that I want to point out with the view here is I'm on a Mac computer, so it's different if you're on a Windows. But if you go up into Google Earth Pro here on a Mac and you select Preferences, this pops up. If you are on a PC, you're going to want to go to Tools, and there should be option. There will be an option labeled Options. So go to Tools, select Options, and this Preferences table will pop up. And so the main thing I do with this is the 3D view, which so Google Earth, you can change how you perceive the topography and the landscape. So you can select the terrain, elevation, exaggeration. This is what I'm talking about. You need a value greater than 0. So we could do 0.05. And if I hit OK, we can look around here, the Deschutes Canyon. Looks pretty flat there. You know, it gives you more of an actual map perspective. And then again, if you really want a true map perspective, change that view tilt so you're looking straight down at the river there. Then you kind of need to zoom out a little bit to adjust that. All right, but if we really want to exaggerate the topography, you go back into that preference pane under elevation exaggeration. You can crank that all the way up to 3, which 3 is a little extreme, so I usually go with 2. And again, since we're looking straight down it like a map, you can't really perceive the elevation much. But if we start going up, start zooming in, again, just to zoom back up. but now you really can get more of a sense of what's up and what's down. Sometimes that can be really helpful if you're trying to create a map. Going back up to preferences here. Just to really exaggerate, let's say we put that on 3. Go back up to preferences. I don't think this is saving what I'm doing actually. All right, so where we're at right now actually is pretty flat, I guess. So here we are changing the view again. Another neat feature in Google Earth is that you can adjust the terrain exaggeration, and so you can have it very flat like a typical map, or you can have it really exaggerate. So here right now with the view that we have now, this is kind of the default settings. So if you go up on a Mac, you're going to want to go up to Google Earth Pro, go down to Preferences. If you are using a Microsoft computer, you will want to select Tools and then select the option that is labeled Options, so Tools and Options, and then you will get this Preferences page that pops up. The main thing that I do on this preference page, there's several options, but you just want to be on the 3D view. Go down here to Terrain and Elevation Exaggeration, and so you can have it basically anywhere from 0 to 3. So let's max this out to 3, and you're going to hit Apply and select OK. So you can see things on the elevation exaggerate a little bit, and some of it you need to zoom in to notice more. And then as you zoom in, you'll have to tilt the view back up so you can actually see it. But this can be helpful because you can kind of see the natural drainages out on the landscape. Again, sometimes you really have to zoom in more to make this more evident. But this can be helpful with designing a pipeline or a spring. Here you can see that we have water coming down this drainage here. You get a good sense of where the water is going to go on the landscape in terms of if you're trying to create a diversion ditch or other things. If we zoom out here, I want to demonstrate one other thing here. If we go to more of an orchard setting, some of these hills here are more prevalent to look at than what we were seeing earlier. That view back up. Zoom in here. I just want to demonstrate again, if you're looking at the orchard here and you're trying to figure out which way do you want to design a new road that goes through the orchard, what you could do is you could go to the ruler, select ruler, gonna have a path there. We're gonna want the elevation profile, what we don't want to show it yet until we make it. So let's say one option is you go through here. I say save road option A. Oh, let's create another one here. Again, go back to that. Is it less steep or steeper to put a road in over here that would take you up there? Save road option B. Okay, so now we've got the 2 roads there, and then what you do, go over there to that location on the places, select road option A, right click on that, Then you can select elevation profile. And then you can write this down that, okay, this way we've got just trying to show that distance there. You have the average slope from that line. You go down to road option B, right click on that. You can select show elevation profile for that road. And we can see that, oh, it looks, in general, it appears to have a more gradual slope than our other road option. So this might be the path that you want to take. And again, it's just the view on the screen is changing as I'm moving the mouse in the elevation profile. The other thing you can also do, it gives the total distance as well there. But a lot of these you can select get info, and then any description or anything that you have there will pop up. So again, if you want to save these as permanent road options, you would want to drag them up and save them under your roads file. Otherwise, it's fine to leave them in temporary places if you're going to close and you've already saved that information. A really neat feature in Google Earth is that it allows you to look at historical imagery. So you see here there's a clock with an arrow going counterclockwise on it, and then it'll come up saying show historical imagery. I'm going to select that. And this ruler, the clock feature there is just showing that this is the historical imagery toolbar, but then the looks like we're zoomed in all the way. The zoom in and zoom out feature here, it's changing the dates on the toolbar. So if we zoom way out, we're zooming in, excuse me, so we're zooming in, so we're getting closer and closer dates. So then if you click this, you can travel back in time. So this is July 20th of 2018. And again, all this is satellite imagery, so the satellites go over at different times. And so I'm going to zoom out on our calendar there a little bit. So each of these little dots, each of these little lines, excuse me, is when satellite imagery was done. And you'll see that, well, it looks like for this location, the furthest back we can go is 1996. But you can see if we go back to that imagery, it's going to be a lot grainier image because in the last 20 years, the satellite imagery has become much more improved. And so we have much higher resolution imagery that we can use on Google Earth Pro now than if you go back to 1996. But sometimes there are still major farming practices that have changed that you can track over time there. See if anything here changes. Obviously the different. So here you can see in this part of the orchard there, we've got trees. And then 2003, there are no trees. So that's a good way to realize, okay, when was this field last planted with trees? You could use this to look at. The other thing with trees that's interesting is you can change, you're changing the date of the imagery by year, but often it's changing by month as well. And so sometimes you're trying to map something that's in a forested location with horticultural trees or from natural vegetation, and sometimes the leaves and foliage will block out some of the details you want to see. So if you are able to find historical imagery for a month when the leaves are gone over the winter time, sometimes you can get a much better estimate of distance and area in a pasture if you don't have the foliage blocking your view of what's going on the ground. So yeah, now 2005, you can see that orchard has trees back in it. So I'm going to zoom out here. And one thing that I have found very striking in Google Earth Engine here, a little lost here, but okay, we want to go back towards the Deschutes. Again, zoom out a little bit. So this gets interesting. So, well, this is July 2018. If we want to know the specific date, just zoom in on it. Okay, that's imagery from July 2nd, 2018. So 2018, we had the substation wildfire that occurred that burned much of the wheat country and the Deschutes River corridor that we're looking at here. So July 2nd, 2018, before the fire, everything looks normal. Go to July 22nd, suddenly that satellite imagery is showing just the huge expanse of what was burned from that fire. And you can see the satellite imagery, it's even showing the retardant drops that were placed there in red to the north end of the fire flank here. So this can be interesting if you want to see what was burned. You can see just the massive destruction from that wildfire. It's very sobering to actually see through Google Earth here. So anyways, and again, we have imagery from 2019, and you can see that, overall, there's a good recovery that has occurred between years. And I also believe, other thing to point out here with July 2nd, I'm zooming into this field here. Okay, so let's fast forward. So you can see that it was harvested between the 2nd and the between July 2nd and July 22nd. You can see it was harvested, I believe, that here you can see there's a couple lines through the field there, I think. There's a road that's going through it. But you can see that, there's much more tracks. You can see combine action that has happened there in that field since then. So kind of neat how you can go back in time there. And you can create a map with different imagery on there. You can select which year you want it from. For most intents and purposes with ag, you're going to want the most recent photo. Sometimes it's depending on what you're trying to show. Obviously in June here, it's looking a lot greener than it was back in July of 2018. Let's go back 2015. That's May, so you can see just how much more green everything is there. So it depends what you're trying to map sometimes too. If you want to show where different springs and other wet spots are in your operation for potentially developing springs in the future, sometimes you want to be able to see that water layer versus July when everything is just baked with the satellite imagery. It's harder to identify where potential water sources might be that you're trying to utilize for a spring or for livestock development. One interesting thing here, you can see the railroad tracks I did our example road on. You can actually see the trains are parked along the tracks there during that. The other nice thing for wheat production, it depends. Some of this imagery, it's not so great that it's not from every single year, but sometimes you can tell when a wheat field was in crop or in fallow. So here field 1 still looking pretty bare there, but this is November 2011. You can definitely see this wheat field here was in crop because of how green it is versus the fallow field where nothing is planted at the moment. So next, we can actually dive into how you could actually use this to create a map that you can save to your computer or you can print it out. So we're going to, you close out of the ruler toolbar there and it takes you to the most recent imagery that's available. And what we can do next is that all these, you have the option of emailing it or printing it to yourself. But all these options here, I'll give you different options of how you can save this as a map. So if we just hit print, this additional information pops up here. And so you can type in a title for your map. Say example farm. So you can see there I clicked on it. It said write a description for your farm underneath the title. And sometimes you want to write a lot of stuff about it. Sometimes you just want it to simply have a title. You can see the legend there is showing the features that we have road A along the railroad tracks in field 1 that are labeled there. and it is difficult. You can select edit here, and that edit button just allows you to show what you want to actually show there. So if we don't want field 1 showing up, you can deselect it. But if you have those features on the map, you're probably just going to leave all those checked. But it's just another option for you to customize your map. The other nice thing is you can see we have our north arrow here in the lower right hand corner. We have a scale bar for scale. And then again, map options. You can dive more into what you want to have or not have. Like you can take the title off the map. Maybe we don't want a legend. I'd suggest leaving the scale on there no matter what. The compass is typically fairly helpful. Some of these styling things that, guess that's a black and white map. So that's one thing if you're trying to save printer ink, you could do it that way. Okay, so we're going to say save. Oh, save the file for the map here. We actually want to page setup. Do you want this? What size paper are you trying to print this map to? You can change the landscape or portrait view. Some other options here. So you hit print. That'll actually try to print it right off your computer. You can also save PDF. Let's say just test. And then sometimes it takes a minute to process this. Often it does take a minute or two. So that's being printed out. And I decided to leave all the layers on. So like we've got the trail there labeled. We've got the roads labeled. The roads along the interstate and whatnot. Sometimes you want those selected, sometimes you don't. But again, you can play with what labels you want showing up when you create a map or not. So I'm just going to pull up this test map that we just did. So then this is what that final map looks like. So you can see here, I find that often the polygon features, creating the roads, here you can see the red line around field 1. It's not really showing up that great. So you actually have to make them wider than you realize sometimes. And it doesn't help here that we decide not to have a legend or title up. So that gives less information and perspective. But these maps are great if you're trying to create an emergency preparedness map, letting others know where are things located at your farm. And we're way zoomed out here, but you can get real up close and personal in some other areas as well. So if you're done with your map and you know we have a different view here, you just hit the X and it gets all that extra stuff out, and then you're back to the normal view. But again, you can create pretty customizable maps, even like labeling individual buildings that might be on your farming operation. The nice thing with Google Earth is that there are a lot of files in the KML or KMZ file formats that you can get off the internet, and often these layers provide additional information that will provide beneficial information. So to begin with, go on the internet, type in Earth Point Topo, and you'll see hopefully Topo Map -Earth Point will pop up. You select that. What this provides is topographical maps that you can put on Google Earth. That often the satellite imagery is very helpful, but sometimes if you're trying to remember the name of a particular landmark, these USGS topographic maps have some great information on where things have been located in the past, and if you're trying to remember the name of a butte that's located on your operation. So anyway, so all you have to do is hit view on Google Earth. That will prompt a download, and you can either select on that download file, which I'm going to do here, or you can also Google Earth Pro, you can go up to file and open, and you should be able to find that download. So anyways, here you can see that we now have a topographic map over the top of our satellite imagery. These dotted lines with the dots there, those are the power lines. So if we deselect lines right up with the power lines there, maybe you can see those. And again, whenever you do this, it's going to automatically put it down into temporary places. And so you're going to want to then drag that up into places, which I already have this file located there. So I'm going to delete it from down here. And just to show you what's going on here, I zoom out, you can see, oh, there's no topo map there. What this download does is it's constantly updating from the internet the location you're looking at on your screen. So again, if you zoom way out, hold on here, it might, yeah, you can see those squares with the circular arrows going around it. That's showing that's being updated from the internet. So when you download this, just be aware that you're going to need a decent internet connection to utilize it while you're using it. And again, if you have multiple files like those open, that's going to be really draining on your internet. So I'd suggest, only having one of these open at a time. But you can see, I mean, for a topographic map, there's pretty good detail. Looking at the screen here, that's pretty well detailed. It's not all blurry. This Earth Point topo map is by far the best free download site that I have found that you can get pretty high resolution. And then you can also see the topographic lines on the map. You start zooming in, it does get a little bit more blurry though. So that can be helpful to utilize. Now, and as you can see, often when you zoom in, it can get blurry, but it will readjust it like it did just here, and it adjusts the tiles to the correct resolution so it's not blurry on your screen anymore. So this is awesome that you can print out a topo map of this if you'd rather than just have the satellite imagery on the background. You can see our roads and other things still lay over the top of it. So other useful thing from the internet community is if you type in soil web Google Earth Library, this soil web at www.gelib.com, select this. What this is this is a product from UC Davis in California that basically they have extrapolated all the soil data information that NRCS has and made it as a download similar to the topo map that automatically adjusts through the internet what you're looking at. So you'll see this site. It's a good site, but there's all these advertisements. You don't want to select on any of those. Just go down here and then the actual box that says download with Google Earth, select that. It's going to download that KML file. Again, you just want to double click on that. It should automatically open up in your web browser. Again, I'll try to save it in temporary places. So if this is something you want to use, again, make sure that you move that into under my places. I'm going to delete this because I already have it installed up above. So you select that. And this is one of those things that I would not have the topo point map going and soil web at the same time. That's going to really bog down your internet connection. But all right, here you see all the polygons with the different soil names. And these letters, numbers and letters are the map soil unit, which doesn't tell you a whole lot just at looking at it. But if you select anywhere on that polygon, oh, it popped out. This pops up and it tells you what type of soil it is. It's got this nice profile in centimeters of the average depth of that soil. Along the Deschutes here, there's a lot of rock, so rock outcrop 30%. What else can we look at here? Well, the field there, select that polygon. So it's a silt loam soil, so that means it's a little bit more farmable than the rocky stuff down along the Deschutes. But the next thing you can do is if you click on this, it pops this up and it gives you a bunch of detailed information on those soils. In my opinion, if you get information through a web soil survey through the online browser that NRCS has, sometimes you can get more detailed reports through that system. But if you're just curious what type of soils you have, this is a good way that you can look in relationship to other features you are familiar with on Google Earth Pro, and you can quickly see what the soil layout is like. And again, take these soils with a grain of salt like you would in a web soil survey. Some of these soil perimeters, you know, they were well surveyed, but in a lot of areas, you know, it's not like they dug 50 soil pits on an acre to determine how it changes. A lot of these are kind of rough extrapolations. So just keep that in mind when you're using this information. That take it with a grain of salt, that it's not verbatim, that that's the exact type of soil that's there all the time. So that can be a helpful tool to use. Back to the internet here. If you type in waters data using Google Earth, there's an EPA website that should come up. Go to download. Hit the download button. Again, this is a KML file that is downloaded, KMZ, excuse me, in this case. Just like we did, you're going to open that up. Kind of zooming us out quite a bit there. If you are ever using this program that starts zooming you way out, all you have to do is tap the screen and it should stop you moving. So okay, we got zoomed out here on accident. What can you do to get back to what you're looking at? So we were by field 1 here. So if you go to right click on field 1, get info. It's already showing up on the screen, that's why it's not working here. Sometimes it takes you directly to that spot when you select that option. Of course, we can always zoom in here. Zooming back in. Okay, so again, under temporary places, we have a lot of stuff going on here. Excuse me. So let's take soil web back out there. Okay. So now you scroll down and you can see surface feature layers. Select that. So what this layer has, it's a bunch of water information. Pipelines, streams, canals. It also has some EPA information that I'm not certain how often it is updated. And they have different points for water monitoring. So on the Deschutes River, they do have a monitoring point there. That gives you information on that. Green circle, there's a stream gauge up there supposedly. So sometimes this can be helpful. Sometimes this is too much information for your ag operation, but it's another way to visualize things in Google Earth if you want additional information. And again, if you don't want to have all this stuff open, all you have to do is uncheck it and you don't have to look at it anymore. And again, that's saved under temporary places. In this case, I think that's fine with us. We're just exploring it. We don't need it to be there next time we open this up.